Okay. Tov, good morning. So we start Perek Hey, chapter 5. I think it's the forgotten chapter of Sefer Yehoshua. We usually thinking about, I myself thinking about Sefer Yehoshua, we're thinking about the beginning of it, the crossing the Yarden, and then the wars. But between the Yarden and the wars, there is chapter 5, which I think it's a very short chapter, three short stories. And I think that even though it's a little bit forgotten and short, without this chapter, we cannot understand the rest of the book. Why I'm saying that? Because the rest of the book is Am Israel comes to the land of Israel and start to kill people, right? There are some arguments against learning, there were in Israel arguments against learning Sefer Yehoshua in schools because it's two military books. We only read about wars and conquer the land of Israel, and what about the local inhabitants and killing everybody. All this stuff may seem a little bit strong, but I think that Perek A, chapter 5, can help us a little bit understand all the context. So even though it is small and forgotten, why I'm saying forgotten, once I taught this book, Sefer Yehoshua, and I remember there was someone there that it was Israeli, learned in Israeli school, he knew all the stories, but he said, you know what, I totally forgot that we ever read this chapter. So that's why I call it the forgotten chapter, right? But I think that it's really important. And let's see what it's talking about. First of all, I would say that there are three short stories. The first story is about Brit Milah. After crossing the Yarden, all Am Israel did Brit Milah. The second story is the first Korban Pesach, the sacrifice of Pesach. We mentioned it yesterday when we learned about Sefer HaChinuch, right? So this is the second story. And the third story, 2 verses, is an encounter, meeting with an angel. 2 verses, not very clear what is the purpose of that, what's happened there exactly. So we're going to see that. And I believe that all these 3 chapters are related to each other, and not 2 chapters, 3 parts of the chapter are related to each other and are very important as the first steps of the Jewish people in the land of Israel. Let's read a little bit and then we'll see the explanation about that. So first of all, the first verse actually belongs to the former chapter. In the Jewish division, it's not belongs to this part. You know that there is a Jewish division of the Bible. The chapters that we use is not a Jewish division, separation of issues. It's Christian actually. Some how do you say, Nazir, priest or something like that. Yeah, it's someone who was very educated, he knew a lot of Bible. He decided to divide it in this way, what is usually good division. It's comfortable and everybody get used to it. There are some places where it can be dangerous because it changes the meaning. Mostly in the last prophets. If you see the last prophets, many times it's different. How do you divide the prophecies? Because if the prophecies ends in a bad things, could mean that Chas v'Shalom, Hashem abandoned the Jewish people. But if you read the next verses, you can see that here comes the good part, the good future. So maybe in the middle we have punishments and Hashem is angry about us, but in the end it ends in different way. So it depends when you stop the prophecy, when you stop the chapter, it can change the meaning of the reading. But there are some places, like in this place, where it's also according to the context, to the content of the chapter, it's quite clear that it belongs to the former chapter. It says here, when all the kings of the Amorim on the western side of the Yarden and all the kings of the Canaanim near the sea heard, just in parentheses, you see that the Amorim, the Amori, it's nation, they were in the mountain mostly. And the Canaanim were near the sea, a little bit more to the west. Right? But it says here, all the Amorim of the western side of the Yarden and all the kings of the Canaanim near the sea heard how the Lord has dried up the waters of the Yarden for the sake of the Israelim until they crossed over, they lost heart. That means they were afraid. And no spirit was left in them because of the Israelim. So this is only completing what we saw last time, that the purpose of the miracle of the crossing the Yarden was to increase the name of Yehoshua, that Am Yisrael will accept him as Moshe, as their leader, to show the Am Yisrael that Hashem is with them, but also to make the other nation to be afraid of the Jewish people. So this is what's completing what we saw in the last chapter. And then comes the next verse and starts the first story of Perek Hey. It says, at that time, what time? Immediately after crossing the Yarden. So if you remember, crossing the Yarden was Yud, 10. So also if you remember, it was like 3 days between the camp of Israel in the eastern side of the Yarden and the city of Jericho. And they were walking half a day, crossing the Yarden, and continue walking until the night to Gilgal. So we can say that they are in the distance of 2 days, more or less, than from Jericho. Right? We are 2 days distance of the first war. And what is the first order that Hashem gives to Yehoshua? At that time, the Lord said to Yehoshua, make flint knives and proceed with the second circumcision of the Israelim. Very, very not clever step, right? Because you know that after making Brit Milah to adult people, they become sick. At least 3 days. We remember the story of Shechem, when the brothers of Dinah, Shimon and Levi, convinced the people to make Brit Milah, and then they killed all of them because they were sick and they couldn't fight. So is it clever to make Brit Milah when you are 2 days away from your enemies, and they know that you cross the Yarden? How do we know that they know? We've just read that all the kings of the land have heard about it. So why are you doing that? Certainly, we trust here in a miracle, that even though they will be very sick, nothing is going to happen. They're not going to attack them. So again, it's to trust a miracle. And we usually don't do that. We need a very good reason to have a miracle. Like we said the last time about crossing the Yarden. Hashem doesn't make miracles only to make miracles. Yes, he do that for a purpose, for a reason. Usually we have the laws of the nature, and we live according to them. And Hashem made the world with these laws of the nature, and it's continue always like that. And here suddenly we explained why we needed the miracle of crossing the Yarden. Now again, another miracle, or at least we trust, we think, we believe that Hashem would help us, that we won't be attacked by the people of Jericho. Again, so it looks like, why to do this step right here? Can they wait until the first war, or do that before crossing the Yarden? What is the reason that the first things after crossing the Yarden, we have Brit Milah, and not one person, all Am Yisrael? So it said, let's see, it says the next verse. Vayas lo Yehoshua, so Yehoshua had flint knives made, and the Israelim were circumcised at Givat HaOralot. What is Givat HaOralot? The hill of the Orla. Orla is what they cut in the Brit Milah. So it was so many until it was like a hill. Today we usually bury them in the land, right? The Orlot. So what it wants to say, that it was something huge. 600,000 men, or at least 100,000 of men, did Brit Milah in the same time. Nobody waited, some group to keep to guard the campment, or whatever. They all together did the Brit Milah. And I forgot to ask, what it means, Shenit? It says second time.
The first time is when they go out.
Yeah, so the last time they did Brit Milah was before coming out from Egypt. That means that during all the 40 years, as we're going to see, all the 40 years in the desert, nobody had Brit Milah.
Wow.
The Gemara says that it was dangerous. It was like today, when the baby is sick, we don't do Brit Milah. So in the desert, for some reason, it's considered a risk for everybody. So they didn't do Brit Milah during 40 years. And now it's not a risk. As we just asked, now we are before a war. It's a bigger risk, right? But that's what it say. They did that before coming out from Egypt. And they did that after entering the land of Israel. If you remember the story about the Yetziat Mitzrayim, we have the verse that we say in the Haggadah, Va'omar lach bedamai chai. I told you, you will live with your blood. That blood with plural. It says bedamech, bedamai, like two kinds of bloods. What does it mean that with your blood you will live? Yeah, so we said that there were two mitzvot that Am Yisrael did before he came out from Egypt. First of all, Brit Milah, and the second, Korban Pesach. And both of them are made by blood, right? Brit Milah make you bleed, and Korban Pesach, it's also with the blood of, they put it on the doors, right? The blood of the Korban. So we can see that they did, the last thing they did before coming out from Egypt was two kinds of blood. And the first thing that they are doing into the land of Israel is the same two kind of mitzvot, two kind of bloods. The Brit Milah, and after that we'll see Korban Pesach. Anyway, it says, and this is the reason why Yehoshua had the circumcision performed. All the people who had come out of Egypt, all the make of military age, had died during the desert, wandering after leaving Egypt. During the desert wandering after leaving Egypt. Now, whereas all the people who came out of Egypt had been circumcised, none of the people born after the Exodus during the desert wandering had been circumcised. Because for the Israelites had traveled in the wilderness 40 years until the entire nation, the men of military age who had left Egypt, had perished because they had not obeyed the Lord. And the Lord had sworn never to let them see the land that the Lord has sworn to their fathers, to assign to us, a land flowing with milk and honey. And he had raised up their sons in the stead, and it was this that Yehoshua circumcised, for they were uncircumcised, not having been circumcised on the way. Okay, so it's explained here all the context, right? So those who came out from Egypt were with Brit Milah. Those who were born in the desert didn't have the Brit Milah until they entered the land of Israel, and then everybody got his Brit Milah. Again, it doesn't explain why in this moment, why it's so important until we need a miracle to make sure that they will live after that. And this miracle wasn't during the 40 years in the desert. After the circumcising of the whole nation was completed, they remained there where they were in the camp until they recovered. Okay, so I'm leaving now still this question open until the next story. So this is the first story. The first story is that immediately after crossing the Jordan, in the first place where they lived, in the other when the camp, in the other side of the Jordan, everybody, all the people who were born in the desert and now were the soldiers of the Jewish people, all of them had to pass for Brit Milah in this moment. So this is the first story. The second story. And the Lord said to Yehoshua, no, it's complete in the first story. And the Lord said to Yehoshua, today I have rolled away from you the disgrace of Egypt. So that place was called Gilgal, as it still is. So we mentioned the name Gilgal several times. What does it mean, Gilgal? Gilgal, legalgel or legalot, means rolled away the disgrace of Egypt. What was the disgrace of Egypt? That they didn't have Brit Milah. Why that? In Egypt they did have Brit Milah. Only after going out from Egypt they didn't have. But that was a consequence, you can say, of the staying in Egypt. Anyway, this was in this moment, and then it says, encamped at Gilgal in the steppes of Jericho, the Israelim offered the Passover sacrifice on the 14th day of the month toward evening. So again, speaking about the days, they crossed the Jordan, they did Brit Milah, they waited 3 days, and immediately they have Pesach. Is it connected, related to each other? Maybe yes, as we learned. Yeah, part of Dam Pesach Dam Milah, we learned also in Sefer HaChinuch that people that are not circumcised cannot do Korban Pesach, right? Remember that? We learned that in the afternoon, right? One of the conditions to be able to make Korban Pesach is making Brit Milah. Without Brit Milah, you cannot make Korban Pesach. Even if it justifies that you don't have Brit Milah. What does it mean justified? We know what it's that every baby has to do Brit Milah. But what's happened, Chas v'Shalom, one family had a baby, they had Brit Milah with him, and then he passed away immediately. We suspect that it's because of the Brit Milah. And then they have another baby, they also did him Brit Milah, and he also passed away. Chas v'Shalom, it's a big tragedy, but it used to happen sometimes. That means, apparently, it related to some disease where the blood cannot be, how do you say, yeah, when you are bleeding, normally there's a process in the body that stops the bleeding.
Forgot the name of the.
Yeah, so I forgot the name of the. What?
Hemophilia.
Hemophilia, right.
Hemophilia.
So people with hemophilia cannot have Brit Milah, right? But in the ancient world, they didn't know about these families, just knew that they make into this family Brit Milah, and the kids dead. So what is the law? What you should do? In the first child, you cannot do Brit Milah. It's not allowed to do Brit Milah. Is it the fault of the baby that he doesn't have Brit Milah? Of course not, right? It's not something that is his fault. He didn't do anything. His parents didn't do anything. But although he cannot do Korban Pesach, V'kol arel lo yochal bo. So we can see that only people that have Brit Milah can do Korban Pesach. So there is a connection. So also now we understand maybe why it was so necessary to do the Brit Milah immediately. Why? Because they wanted to do Korban Pesach on time, which is the 14th day, right? So we have the connection. But still, again, okay, so if they can, they can't. Or they could have done that before. Like they needed to cross the Yarden and then do Korban Pesach. Now let's see another connection between Korban Pesach and Brit Milah. As we said before, only someone who did Brit Milah can do Korban Pesach. These are the two mitzvot that they did before coming out from Egypt, and the two first mitzvot that they do when they enter to the land of Israel. And there's another connection, interesting connection, which is the punishment for not doing that. As you know, in the Torah, we have different kinds of punishments, right? There is hits, when you hit the people, or killing them, right? There is also punishment like that, or punishments that come from Hashem. It can be different kinds of punishment that come from Hashem. And one of those is karet. What does it mean, karet? Karet literally means cutting something. Nichreta nefesh hayim mikerev amam means cutting this person from being part of the Jewish people. This is generally the meaning of karet. This is maybe the most severe punishment that we have, because we can see that according to the sins that related to this punishment. For example, avodah zarah, idolatry, also Shabbat. The most important things in Judaism, the punishment is karet. Usually punishment are for mitzvot lo taseh. What does it mean, mitzvot lo taseh? The thing that we cannot do, right? Hashem told you, lo tirtzach, don't murder. Hashem told you, don't eat pig, I don't know, right? So this is mitzvot lo taseh. The punishment of karet mainly comes for averot, which are mitzvot lo taseh. If you transgress, if you're not making an action that is forbidden according to the Torah, you are punished with karet, right? Hashem will do that. We don't know exactly what is it because it's a spiritual punishment, right? We don't feel it in this world, right? But we believe that in the real world, in the next world, there is some kind of very severe punishment, which means cut the connection between you and the Jewish people. This is generally what is correct. And it's, like I said before, for mitzvot lo taseh, negative commandments. And the only two mitzvot aseh that the punishment is correct is Brit Milah and Pesach, Korban Pesach. Means that if you don't do Brit Milah in purpose, not because the seed that we talked about, right? If you're not doing Brit Milah on purpose, or you are not making Korban Pesach on purpose, today we do Korban Pesach? Unfortunately, no, but we are anusim. Force majeure, how do you say? We don't have the possibility to do. So it's not, we are not punished for not doing Korban Pesach, right? But when you had the opportunity to do Korban Pesach and you chose not to do Korban Pesach, the punishment is karet. So we can see that the only two mitzvot that are positive mitzvot means in a positive order to do some action that you decided not to do, that the punishment is the most severe punishment in Judaism is Korban Pesach and Brit Milah. So what is the connection? What is the meaning of all of that? So what it's quite clear that these two mitzvot are related to the covenant with Hashem. Means that what makes you part of the Jewish people is being born to a Jewish mother, right? But what an active act and something that you do or your parents do that makes you part of the Jewish people are these two actions. Brit Milah and Korban Pesach, it's what makes you part of the Jewish people, part of Am Israel. And this, like, as the word Brit Milah, what is Brit Milah? Is a covenant with Hashem, right? So it was important to do this covenant before going out from Egypt, right? Before they went from Egypt, they had to do this Brit Milah because that's what made them the Jewish people. Am Israel that can do after that in Har Sinai is a covenant with Hashem. And also enter into the land of Israel, the most important thing to understand is that we are not wandering around looking for a territory to live. We are not just need a comfortable arrangement where all these slaves, people who were slaves in Egypt, now can arrange themselves and start new life. We are here with a purpose, and the purpose is to construct, to build the people of Hashem, and they have this mission of the world. That's the only thing that justify really coming to this land and live there and take away all the people and even kill people and take away all the people, only because you have here a purpose as a divine people, as part of your connection with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's the reason you can live there. So that's what I say, without this chapter, all the rest of the book, we cannot understand it, right? So the first thing, and that's why it was so important to do that in the beginning, in the entrance of the land of Israel. We asked also, why didn't they wait until the Jordan of the river will be lower in the days of the summer? Or why did it, so Hashem had to do like the miracle of crossing the Jordan? Or why couldn't they wait with the Brit Milah after the first war? Or why do not do that before crossing the Jordan? No, entering to the land of Israel is a new period in the history of the Jewish people, and you have to renew the covenant. The covenant that was done in Egypt before going out is now should be renewed because it's a new level, it's a new stage of this relationship with Hashem. And here we have to add this point. Again, Eretz Israel, the land of Israel, it's not only an arrangement. It's essential part of this relation between Hashem and Am Israel. We could have thought that it doesn't matter where we live. We can make a country. You know that there was this offer to do the country of the land of Israel, the state of Israel in Uganda, and also in Argentina. In some point, there were some people who tried to do that in Argentina to build the land of the state of Israel. No, it can be a solution for anti-Semitism. How do you say anti-Semitism, right? or problem like that, but it's not the real solution because the land of Israel is part of the covenant between Hashem and Am Israel. And we can see that also in many, many places. But for example, when Abraham was ordered to make Brit Milah, in the same verses, he also was told that he will get the land of Israel, right? So we can see that the Brit Milah comes with this connection with the land of Israel. That means that essential part of the national mission of Am Israel is Eretz Israel. It's these three aspects: Am Israel, the nation of Israel, Eretz Israel, the land of Israel, and Torat Israel, the Torah. These three together are what make us the power to fulfill our mission in this world, which is to be the people of Hashem. Without each one of these parts, it can't work. It can't work for the long term. There is a very famous mashal, parabola or explanation of Sefer HaKuzari, Rabbi Yehuda Levi in Sefer HaKuzari. He explains this relationship between the land of Israel and Am Israel, the nation, the Israeli nation. It says that it's like a vineyard. What is vineyard? When the grapes grow, right? A vineyard. So it says you can plant a vineyard in a place where it's not the ideal, it doesn't have the ideal conditions to make grapes. So it can work. Maybe there are going to be some grapes, maybe you can do some wine, but it won't be in the best quality, right? In the best way it could have grown. But if you take this vineyard, the same vineyard, and you put it in the right climate, in the right place, and give it the right care, right? You are doing the right action that you have to do in order to grow the grapes, then the grapes would be in the most excellence level, right? So he says the same with Am Yisrael. He needs his conditions. What are the conditions? Am Yisrael needs his conditions. The condition is the right place, the right climate, and the right actions. And then the grapes will be, the fruit will be in the best quality. What is the right place, the right climate? It's Eretz Yisrael. It's not the natural climate, it's a spiritual climate. The hair of Eretz Yisrael, that means the spiritual hair of Eretz Yisrael, it's what makes us bring our character to its best expression, right? You express your character, your potential in the best way. And what is the right care? How do we take care of the vineyard? How do we take care of Am Yisrael? Is the Torah and the mitzvot. So Am Yisrael can be the best nation or can just survive. If we want to fulfill all or express all of our potential, we need these two conditions: the Torah and the land of Israel. Only in this combination of these three elements, Am Yisrael, Torah Israel, and Eretz Israel, this is where we can really fulfill our mission. So that's why it was so important to do that immediately. They entered to the land of Israel, especially in this time. They didn't went to the summer, they didn't do that before, especially in this time, in order to make immediately, the first thing before starting the wars and everything is to make Korban Pesach. It was essential, it was very important. And also, in order to be able to do Korban Pesach and to renew the covenant, they did in the beginning of the entrance to the land of Israel this Brit Milah, right? So in these two elements, two mitzvot, we understand that the land of Israel is part of the spiritual mission and not only a convenient arrangement where to live. Okay, so this is the reason why we start with these two mitzvot. So here comes another point, that they start eating from the harvest of the land of Israel. So on the day after the Passover offering, on that very day, they ate of the produce of the country, unleavened bread and parched grain. Yeah, matzot vekalui. What is a day after Korban Pesach? It's 15. It's the first day of Pesach. It's Yom Tov. So apparently they maybe did that before. And as you know, the next day, the day after, is the day of Korban HaOmer. That means the first new harvest of barley. They used to make a korban of it, and then they could eat from the new harvest. Before that, you cannot eat. It's called Chadash, the mitzvah of Chadash. And what did they eat until this day? That what the next verse says. And on that same day, well, in Hebrew it doesn't say the same day, it says the next day. On the next day, when they ate of the produce of the land, the manna ceased. The Israelim got no more man. That year they ate of the field of the land of Canaan. So when did the man stop exactly? In that day or before? If you remember, we said it stopped in the day when Moshe died, because the man was for the merit of Moshe. Right? Remember that? We said that the well was for the merit of Miriam, the cloud of glory were for the merit of Aaron. Or we didn't say that. I don't remember where I said that. Anyway, we had three miracles during the wandering in the desert, right? The three miracles were the man every day, the well of Miriam that went with them all over the place, all over the desert, and the glory, the cloud of glory. These three miracles were thanks to three people. The well were for Miriam, the man for Moshe, and the clouds were for Aaron. When Miriam passed away, the water disappeared. How do we know? Because they complained they didn't have water immediately after that. So the Gemara said it came back for the merit of Aaron and Moshe. When Aaron passed away, it was in the first day of Av, so 6-7 months before this story, the cloud stopped. How do we know that? Because immediately after the death of Aaron, there was a war. The king of Arad attacked Israel. And Chachamim say, why did he attack them? Because he saw that the cloud of glory went away. So he thought that Hashem abandoned Chas v'Shalom Am Israel. They weren't the first to be wrong on that. So they came to fight against Israel. So this, again, the Gemara says that the cloud came back for the merit of Moshe. When Moshe passed away in the 7th day of Adar, all the 3 of them went away and they didn't go back. So we can see that as a bad thing, right? We don't have our great leaders. We don't have Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam, who's going to lead us. No, but we have Yehoshua. That means they disappeared, but we are not abandoned for that. Hashem didn't abandon us from that. How do we know? Because they have the harvest of the land. What's the difference? So like we say many times, it's a natural solution. The miracles are going to cease, to stop in this point, in some point, because we're still going to have some miracles, and we're going to start living in a natural way, but gradually. The first harvest, did they work for it? No, they didn't. They were there from the former inhabitants of the land. So they didn't work, but they didn't grow it, but they did have to make the harvest, to make the flour, to make the bread. It wasn't like man prepared in the entrance of your tent, right? It's something that you should work for it. So it starts in the day after Pesach. Okay, so these 3 elements come together. Okay, we have to finish soon. So I think we leave. I just read the story and make some question about it, ask some question about it. So we saw the first 2 stories of the chapter. First story was Brit Milah. Second story was Korban Pesach, and we saw how it related to each other. Now comes the 3rd story. The third story. The third story says, one, when Yehoshua was near Jericho. So in English, again, the translation, it added 1 word, near Jericho. It doesn't say near Jericho. It says, Vayibiyot Yehoshua bi Jericho, in Jericho. So of course, the translation reflects the interpretations, right? It says, how can it be in Jericho? Jericho is closed. They're going to have a war. It didn't Yehoshua, as a leader of Am Israel, would enter Jericho to visit the king. What is going to do in Jericho? No, of course, it's in the zone of Jericho, around Jericho. So what did Yehoshua did around Jericho? Started to prepare the war, right? The leader, the commander, right? He should see the area to understand how he can go, how he can enter. Apparently, in this point, he still didn't know that he's going to have a miracle enter Jericho, because it doesn't say anything about it. Anyway, it was Yehoshua near Jericho. He looked up and saw a man standing before him, drawn sword in hand. Suddenly he saw a man with a sword. Yehoshua went up to him and asked him, are you one of us or of our enemies? Oh, if his enemy is going to answer him, I'm your enemy. It's quite a strange question, right? And the answer, and Yehoshua went there alone without anybody. The king, the commander, the chief commander of the army is going away near the city of the enemies alone. And he replied, no, I am captain of the Lord's host. Now I have come. So what was the answer to the question? Means I'm in your side? Okay, it doesn't say. So Yehoshua threw himself face down on the ground and prostrating himself, said to him, what does my Lord command his servant? He is a true believer, Yehoshua. Just in one answer, he believed, right? And the captain of the Lord's host answered Yehoshua, remove your sandals, your shoes, actually, it says, from your feet, for the place where you stand is holy.
Like Moshe in the snare.
Like Moshe in the snare, but what is the answer to the question? This is a command of the Lord to Yehoshua to take off the shoes. And Yehoshua did so, and the story ends again. Again, according to the Jewish division, it's not hand ears, it's hand in the next verse for the 6th chapter. It says, now Jericho was shut up tight because of the Israelim, no one could leave or enter. So what is the purpose of this meeting with the angel? Why did he meet him? Why Yehoshua believed him so easily and throw himself before him? What is the meaning of the shoes? Now, another difference, you mentioned it's similar to Moshe in the snare, right? That he had to take off, when he saw Hashem in the snare, it had to take off his shoes. There it says, shal na'alecha, take off your shoes in plural. And this is said, shal na'alcha, your shoe. Shoe, you say shoes? How do you say shoes in singular? You don't say. Shoe. Right, a shoe. Take off your shoe. What about the other shoe? It's in a holy place. It's a holy place. So you can stay with one shoe, or you should take off both of them, like Moshe. Okay, so it's a really, really strange, weird story, and it's not clear what is the meaning of it. But Hashem, we're going to see that next week.
Well,
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Larry.